go. All right. So welcome everybody to Peter White Public Library. My name is Marty Acketts, and I'm the adult programming coordinator for Peter White Public Library. And it's my extreme pleasure to host authors reading virtually for February and to welcome Stephen Mack Jones to Peter White Public Library. Before I get started into telling you a little bit about Stephen, I just want to let you know a couple things that are upcoming here at the library, some really great things. This coming Friday, we are going to be hosting at noon here in the community room at the library. We're going to be hosting the movie, showing the movie Elvis. So if you have not seen the movie Elvis, it's fantastic. Austin Butler is kind of amazing in that movie. So that's going to be screening at 12 noon here in the community room. Hopefully we'll be all dug out from Winter Storm Olive by that time. And then next Tuesday, we have Blues Day Tuesday in the community room as well at 7 p.m. And the group that's going to be performing that night is going to be Harp, Heart, and Bones. And if you've never seen them, it's really fantastic. You sort of get a history lesson of blues, as well as some really great blues music as well. And then next month we have lots of stuff coming up, but I wanted to highlight the author that we have for authors reading virtually next month is Colby Cedar Smith, who is also a 2022 notable book author for her book, which was called Call Me Athena. So that will be next month on March 15th. But tonight we are focusing on Stephen Mack Jones. He's an award-winning author of mystery and thriller novels. He's also a published poet, but, we've been talking a little bit about that. And, he doesn't call himself a poet, but he did get published in The Atlantic, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Stephen here. He's a published poet, award-winning playwright, and winner of the Kresge Arts in Detroit Literary Fellowship. He was born and raised in Lansing, Michigan. And he moved to Detroit when he graduated from Michigan State University and has remained in the Metro Detroit area ever since. Before he became a full-time writer, he worked in advertising and marketing and communications. And he's received a lot of accolades for his series, his August Snow crime thriller series. He's been shortlisted. This is pretty amazing. I'm going to go through all these awards and things that he's been shortlisted and has won. He's been shortlisted for the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award, and he was a finalist for the Seamus Award, as well as the Strands Critic Award, and the Nero Wolfe Society awarded August Snow its 2018 Nero Award. And August Snow was the first in the series that Dead of Winter, which was his latest book, is the third in that series. In 2018, he was also the International Association of Crime Writers presented him with the prestigious Hammett Prize. I'm assuming that's after Dashiell Hammett.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so Dashiell Hammett Prize for literary excellence in the field of crime writing. And then August Snow was also named a 2018 Michigan Notable Book by the Library of Michigan, and he also received that honor again for the latest in that series, which is Dead of Winter. And his fourth book, which I got the scoop here, people, the fourth book is called Deus Ex, and that's going to be coming out in November of 2023. So I'm really excited about that. So please join me in welcoming to Peter White Public Library, Stephen Mack Jones.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So I guess we'll begin with a little reading. What I've chosen is, of course, the first book, and let me give you a little background on the main character, August Octavio Snow. August is half Black, half Mexican-American. He was born and raised in a section of Detroit called Mexican Town, which is Southwest Detroit. primarily because a lot of Mexican Americans have lived in that area of town for nearly 100 years of Detroit history. His father was African American and a policeman, and his mother was Mexican American and she was an artist. And we'll go from there. This is from the first book, August Snow. The house is a narrow 2-story, 2-bedroom, red brick colonial with 2.5 baths, hardwood floors, and a small kitchen. The focal point in the living room is a brick fireplace framed by bookshelves. At one time, the bookshelves were full of the works of Federico Garcia Lorca, Pablo Neruda, Juana Inés de la Cruz, Octavio Paz, and Pita Amor. My mother, Isabella Marie Santiago Snow, would read to me from her favorite poems, her patient voice flowing like warm Juarez honey. Of course, in our house, those poets had to share shelf space with classic noir gumshoes, who stood shoulder to hardbound shoulder with the interminably boring and occasionally grotesque, weighty tomes on police procedure and criminal law, rules of evidence and forensics texts, complete with corner photos of humans in various states of disassembly and decay. There were mysteries by Dashiell Hammett, Arthur Conan Doyle, and Raymond Chandler, and first edition signed copies of Rudolph Fisher and Chester Himes. And there were programs from 5 August Wilson plays we had seen as a family at the Fisher Theater in downtown Detroit. After my mother passed away 5 years ago, the modest brick house in the neighborhood known as Mexican Town, once referred to as La Bagley, became mine. It isn't what it used to be, she said of our Mexican Town home. An ornate crucifix she'd brought to the hospital hung above her bed while clear liquids dripped into her slowly disappearing body. No one's working. People forced out of homes they've lived in for years. Thieves are bolder. Freight trucks cut through neighborhoods where children play in the streets. Sell the house, Octavio. Take the money, move somewhere else. Forget that place. I lied and said I would. Then we prayed the rosary. Neither time nor politics have been kind to Detroit. In Mexican Town, they've been downright cruel. In the 1940s, the Mexicans came to Detroit for the same reason Blacks had abandoned the South a decade earlier, well-paying, steady work in the auto factories. The only color Henry Ford saw was U.S. currency green. He didn't care if you were a spick, an Arab, or a nigger, as long as you could tighten a bolt or guide a body onto a chassis. Tighten that bolt, guide that body, get paid. When word got out that working at Ford and General Motors meant good, steady work and money, good, steady money, more Mexicans came to Detroit. Contrary to popular belief, Detroit's white flight didn't start in the 60s. Gringos have always been flying out of the concentric circles of Detroit, all in an effort to avoid, well, everybody. The Germans, the Italians, the Irish, Greeks, Swedes, Finns, Blacks, Mexicans, Vietnamese, now the influx of Chaldeans and Middle East Muslims. All of us have our angry and fearsome ghosts in this mad American machine. In Mexican town, homes once reserved for doctors and wheelers and dealers were soon bought for pennies on the dollar by waves of Mexicans in pursuit of something once considered the exclusive purview of white people, the American dream. For the love of my Mexican mother, my African-American father bought the two-story brick colonial in 1978. He wanted my mother to be close to her family, her friends, her culture. He was an anomaly, a Black man living in a Mexican neighborhood. But eventually, through no small amount of effort on my mother's part and the occasion of my birth, he was accepted. Toasted with tequila at Saturday backyard parties and prayed for on Sunday at Holy Redeemer Church's Spanish language mass. It didn't hurt that my father was a Detroit cop. I've poured some of my settlement money into bringing this house back to life, even going so far as to buy and refurbish 7 other houses on Markham Street. The only house I had to demolish was one to the north of me, which had been beautiful once, but was beyond redemption after 2 decades of broken crack and meth pipes, heroin needles, attempted Devil's Night arsons, human and animal waste. A garden on that plot might be nice. Peppers, kale, cabbage, lettuce, and tomatoes. What's a Blaxican without a garden? Especially if you can't look with pride on your hard work during the early evening or late night hours, a bottle of Negro Modelo beer or chilled shot of Cabresto tequila in hand. While I was away, free diving to the bottom of various bottles of booze around the Mediterranean and Scandinavia, apparently the city thought it would be nice to replace the stripped and gutted street lamps with 8 new solar-powered LED street lamps, a mostly ineffectual effort to ward off crime on a nearly desolate street in Mexican town. I'd tried to get on with my life after the trial and award, live my life as a normal citizen, but I couldn't quite shed the knowledge that I'd failed at a job that I loved. A Judas to the apostles in blue, the eyes on me in grocery stores and restaurants, the unrelenting judgment. I was looked at as if there was someone just over my shoulder, an out of focus and disquieting figure. Everybody loves a hero. Nobody loves a rat. A woman I'd met in Oslo helped me moderate my drinking. A beautiful young woman with smooth brown skin, a smile like sunrise, and eyes the color of amber. Tatina. She was half Somali, half German, a refugee from the perpetual Somali civil war who had seen horrors I couldn't imagine. Somehow her soul had survived, embracing light and exuding warmth. For 3 months beneath the ice blue skies of Norway, I held her, made love with her, felt my body levitate when she laughed. Her breath on my chest felt like where I needed to be. It felt like home. Of course, being from Detroit, I've never quite trusted happiness. So I returned to a city where happiness is usually a matter of finding contentment in an acceptable level of intangible fear, unfocused loathing, and unexplainable ennui. It was early fall when I found myself back in front of my house on the short 12-home street of West Markham in Mexican Town. Nestled against the front door was a small package. Before mounting the steps, I stopped and looked around. A well-fed calico cat stopped in the middle of the street and narrowed its eyes at me as if to say, "The fuck you looking at?" before stealthily moving on. I walked up the steps, then crouched near the box. It was the size and shape of a shoebox and wrapped neatly in brown paper. Even though I'd been gone a year, temperatures were still elevated over my testimony against the former mayor and several Detroit cops, now dismissed or imprisoned, who had aided the mayor in his various criminal exercises. A shoebox wrapped in brown paper could very well be a homecoming gift from anyone who was annoyed that I had destroyed careers and made off with a sizable chunk of money from a bankrupt city. After scrutinizing the package for a minute or so, I carefully lifted it. Too light for a bomb. No telltale odors. I unwrapped the box, a discarded Nike Air Max 90 men's size tin shoebox, and checked for wires. Nothing. Maybe a simple warning inside, a newspaper clipping from the trial with a red X over a photo of me. A stupid note warning me to get out of town by sundown. The cliched metaphor of a dead rat. I lifted the lid. Inside was an empty Skittles candy wrapper. I laughed. At least somebody was glad I was back.
Wow.
How, how we doing out there, folks? Everybody okay?
Good. I really liked it.
That was Patrick.
I really liked all your description and like a deep description, all the adjectives and word choice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is anybody up for chapter 2?
I'm up for chapter 2.
I'm up for chapter 2.
Okay. It's getting so a mackerel snapper can't pray in Detroit. Much to the delight of Lutherans, Baptists, the affluent Catholics of Oakland County, and atheists, the Archdiocese of Detroit has closed or merged nearly 60 Catholic churches in the past year, leaving the city's downtown Black, Hispanic, elderly, and poor Catholics feeling abandoned by a church they had prayed in and tithed to for years. Now, the people who suffered the most during Detroit's perpetual slide into financial insolvency felt even more marginalized and afraid. Sitting tenuously on the threshold of closure were Old St. Anne's, a grand Catholic cathedral built over 300 years ago, and St. Aloysius on Washington Boulevard with its rose-colored marble columns and semicircular well revealing the downstairs altar and pews. Today, I went to St. Al's. One, because I like what the Franciscan brothers do for the homeless and elderly, and two, because hell or high water, they persist in holding daily afternoon mass, regardless of whether 1 or 100 worshipers show up. With downtown's recent revitalization, more young white suburban Catholics in Donna Karan and Pierre Cardin suits were taking time out of their lunch schedules to kneel, bow their heads, and take communion. Not enough new blood to move the church safely off the closure bubble, but enough for the diocese to pocket $1 or $2. At the end of Mass, Father Grabowski took me by the elbow and led me to the alcove. "Good to see you back, August," he said, a smile forming somewhere inside the thick tangle of his full white beard. Grabowski had known my family for years, and he was one of the few priests my father actually trusted. "You know you can't buy your way into heaven though, right?" I took it he was referring to the $2,000 I dropped in the collection plate, very nearly giving Mr. Locat, an elderly black layman, a heart attack. "You need it more than I do, Padre," I said. Grabowski nodded enthusiastically, then said, "Oh, I didn't say I wasn't going to take it. In fact, if you've got any loose change left, I'll take that too. I just said you can't buy your way into heaven." I told Father Grabowski I'd just returned from visiting my parents' graves. Big Jake, the cemetery groundskeeper, a grizzled black bear of a man, had caught me laying down a bag of cashews, my mom's favorite snack, and pouring out a dram of 21-year-old Ashantosh single malt scotch for my dad on the grass covering his grave. The old priest nodded. "They're always in my evening prayers, August." I said, "For what I just dropped in the collection plate, Padre, I'm thinking maybe they should be in your morning and afternoon prayers too." "And again, I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." "That's pretty good," I said playfully. "You should write that down." "Matthew 19:24, Father Grabowski said with a wide yellow-toothed grin. "Yet another reason why you'll never be on Jeopardy, jackass." Like most nuns and priests I'd known, Father Grabowski dreamed of being welcomed at the pearly gates by Alex Trebek. I pulled an air $10 bill out of my pocket and shoved it into Father Grabowski's hand. "All I got left. Get yourself a shave, old man." Unlike the 20 or so faithful who emerged from the Thursday afternoon mass, I discovered there was a car waiting for me outside. The car, a new, brightly gleaming navy blue Ford Taurus with blacked out windows, came equipped with an equally bright and gleaming black driver. "I prayed for you," I said to the tall, slender, and well-dressed driver, leaning casually on the hood of the car. His expensive cologne, carried on the early fall breeze, had a nose-tingling, eye-stinging cheapness to it. Any cologne smells tawdry if you bathe in it. "Oh, yeah?" the driver said as he scanned me from head to toe with eyes shielded by a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses. "Must not have worked. I'm still here." The movie star grin on Detective Lieutenant Leo Collins' chiseled obsidian face disappeared, replaced with a well-practiced scowl. Cowling had been practicing this scowl for upwards of 12 years, ever since we were at the academy together. It still needed practice. See, you've been spending all the taxpayers' money on threads. I was wearing a pair of slightly scuffed brown Bjorn loafers, nicely broken in black buffalo jeans, a gray Nike sweatshirt, and brown leather motorcycle style jacket that had once belonged to my father. Hardly haute couture, but comfortable as hell. I was also wearing a stylish Glock 9mm semi-automatic that was secured by my belt in the small of my back. My mother would have been appalled that I brought a gun to church. My father, however, would have considered it necessary any day of the week in the city and twice on Sunday. In the year I'd been away from Detroit, I never felt the need for a gun, save for 2 interesting weeks in northeastern India. Back in Detroit, old habits reemerged quickly. My Glock was one of several items I reluctantly retrieved from the storage unit I'd packed my life into before I left the country in a concerted effort to die from self-pity and cirrhosis of the liver. Danbury wants to see you, Cowling said. Get in. What's Danbury want? How the fuck I know? Cowling's eyebrows creased over his sunglasses, and he took several aggressive steps toward me. Get in the car, Tex-Mex. Cowling was maybe an inch or two taller than me and in good shape. I'd seen him at the gym at the 14th precinct. He was quick and could handle a speed bag pretty well. On the heavy bag, though, he had nothing, his fists buckling at the wrist. A solid jab to his solar plexus, a right to his jaw, and Colin would be on his ass watching Disney bluebirds fluttering around his head. But it would have been a shame to put him down only a few feet from a house of worship. Don't make me do what? I said, taking a couple steps to close the gap between us. I was already fuel injected with adrenaline. The key was, and always had been, to know when to fire up the engine and hit the gas. After a couple seconds of hard stares, I smiled at Cowling, then turned my back on him and began walking west on Washington toward Campus Martius. What's the old saying about not being able to go home again? That's from the first book, August Snow. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. Let me see. You know, I was telling Marty earlier that I usually stop reading probably after the first chapter because I get bored with the sound of my voice. It's like but here's something that I want to do. I want to read a little bit of the first chapter from the second book, Lives Laid Away, because I've got a story for you. Her secret ingredient was nutmeg. Not a lot, maybe half a teaspoon or less, but she got the same complex undercurrent effect that she would have with smoked East Indian paprika or authentic Mexican chili powder. I was in my kitchen slowly blending half a teaspoon of nutmeg into my homemade salsa, pureed tomatoes from Honeycomb Market, blanched and coarse chopped tomatoes, chopped jalapenos, minced yellow bell pepper, fresh dill, and a quarter lemon squeezed, garlic, sea salt, and coarse ground black pepper. I also added just a bit of chopped cilantro. While I diced, pureed, and blended ingredients, I listened to an old CD of my father's. John Lee Hooker and Santana's classic, The Healer. Cranked to top volume on my stereo. Perfect music to accompany a rakishly handsome Blaxican as he made a poor imitation of his mother's salsa. Courtesy of the potent aroma of the salsa and the music, I could feel my hips, my feet moving in rhythm, and to the rhythm of a slow rumba bolero. And yes, cabron, I dance a mean rumba bolero thanks to my mother's patient lessons and the decades of practice I've had at dozens of Mexican weddings, one Salvadoran Colombian wedding anniversary, and 4 quinceañeras. I'd even given salsa and rumba lessons at Camp Leatherneck and forward operating base Delhi, Beirut in Afghanistan to guys who had just gotten engaged to sweethearts actually awaiting stateside. Go ahead. Ask former Marine Corporal Francis Franco Montoya, Seattle, Washington, or former Marine Sergeant Dwayne Wee Man Nixon, Memphis, Tennessee. Marine killing machines who will freely admit I'm the only guy they ever loved dancing with. It had been a week since I had taken Tatina Stadmuller, my long-distance kind of maybe girlfriend, to Metro Airport for her flight home, back to Oslo, Norway. Back to begin her last year of cultural anthropology doctoral studies at the University of Oslo. I was still feeling buoyant from her visit, like Paul, blinded by righteousness and beauty. The air in my house still carried her warm chocolate and pepper scent. One thing I hadn't intended Tatina to see during her time in Detroit was a black Chevy Suburban, windows blacked out, crawling down Markham Street at ungodly hours of the morning. Tatina had casually noticed the SUV twice during her nighttime bathroom visits. Who are they? She asked over breakfast one morning. Probably somebody coming home from a late shift somewhere. Of course, I knew better. This is Mexican Town. The black Chevy Suburban with blacked out windows was ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Police, trolling in the dark heart hours, mapping potential nests and safe houses of undocumented immigrants. Their official motto, protecting national security and upholding public safety. In Mexican Town, we had a different motto for ICE. If it's brown, lock it down. Now, that was the first chapter from the second book, Lives Laid Away. And before we get into questions, the recipe at the beginning of that chapter, adding nutmeg, a little bit of nutmeg to salsa. I made that up. When I submitted the manuscript to my publisher, or my editor, who is a wonderful person, she actually called me up and she said, Steve, you can't do that. And I was thinking, well, what is it too violent? Did I say something wrong? She said, no, you can't put nutmeg in salsa. That's ridiculous. And I said, well, why don't you try it out before you judge it? She said, I will. Because she and her husband consider themselves foodies. So it's a small office that they have in New York. And I got a call probably close to Christmas a couple of years ago from my editor. And she said, Steve, I made the recipe with nutmeg and everybody in the office loved it. It's like, all right. Do I get more from the advance or what? But it worked out. It worked out. And you'll see from reading the books, if you haven't already, that August really enjoys cooking. It's his way of decompressing. It's his way of, one of the ways he controls the PTSD that he has. And it's also a way of paying tribute to his mother and father. And it's been suggested by my editor that we put together an August Snow cookbook. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But I'm just saying. So does anybody have questions, comments?
If anybody wants to unmute and ask any questions, or you can put them in the chat as well, and I'll monitor that. I want to kick it off with one question. One of my questions is, like, where did you come up with the character of August Snow, and how much of August Snow is you? And how much of you is August Snow? I mean, are you a person who like experiments with food and cooks a lot or anything like that?
I used to do a bit more cooking than I do now. These days, my wife and I usually have a 5-minute conversation that goes, well, what do you want for carryout tonight? So, but how much of, where did August Snow come from? I'll tell you this much. The name came to me as I was mowing the back lawn. And that is really just, mowing the lawn is just zen, right? I mean, you crank it up, you empty your mind, and there's a cold beer at the end of the job. So I'm just mowing the lawn and 2 words settled on my brain, August and snow. And I thought, that's pretty stupid. It doesn't snow in August. And the words wouldn't leave me alone. A couple days, a week, 2 weeks. And I figured by that time, by 2 weeks, I figured I had to do either of 2 things. One was, get psychiatric help. Or 2, write a story with those words. And it just so happened that I had a treatment of a story that turned out to be the first book. And everywhere where I had him saying something or doing something, I had written in capital letters, name, because I couldn't think of a name. And August Snow became the name. And the middle name Octavio, because I love Mexican poet Octavio Paz. So, and I'll even go further. It was maybe 6 months after the first book was out. And morning time around the house, and my lovely wife, Mary Kate, was coming down the staircase, and I was about to go up, and she stopped me when she got to the bottom of the steps and said, "Boy, you know, I've been thinking that name August Snow is perfect for that character, because like August, he runs hot, he can heat up real fast. But at the same time, like Snow, he's very cool and very contained." And I just looked at her and I said, "Yeah, I know that, baby. You know, why you think I named him that? Come on, give me some credit." And, you know, she walked past me and I stood there going, "Oh my God, all this time and I never thought of that." So that's a little history of the name.
Wow. Yeah, I love the juxtaposition of August and Snow together in the same name. It just yeah, it's so evocative. So does anybody have any questions? Because I have like a ton of questions that I could keep asking, but I don't want to like monopolize here. So if anybody wants to unmute or ask any questions, that's fine.
The only question that I refuse to answer is, how much weight did I gain during COVID? I will not answer that.
All right. So one question, because I have a couple of my students here that are in the group. And right now they're heading into their research process for a research paper. And one of the questions that I have is, you know, do you do much research for your novels?
Yes.
When you write them, and you know how you go about researching, or you know, what is your research process like?
My research process is very fractured. It's important that I do enough research to make the story authentic, that I stay true to the people and the environment that I'm writing about. So the rule of thumb is you do a gallon's worth of research and use 2 or 3 teaspoons. But that being said, it's nice to be validated for the research that you have done. I had a lady who was a teacher at a Southern California university. She actually wrote me a letter, a handwritten letter. Who does that anymore? And she sent it to my publisher, and my publisher forwarded it to me. And she had read August Snow, and she said she was originally from Detroit. and that reading the book really brought back fond memories of places she had been, things that she had done in the city. It brought back that atmosphere and that genuine feeling to her, and I was grateful for that, and I still am. So yes, research is very important in fiction, but use it judiciously. Um, never at the sake of a story element.
Yeah. Yeah, my family is originally from Detroit, so reading the novels really, I mean, I've gone back and visited because I've been living in the UP for a very long time, but even reading those novels really, my family loves the books because it reminds them of Detroit, the
That's
Detroit
wonderful.
that they knew.
Thank them.
So I will do that. Yeah. Do you let's see. I'm testing because, like I said, I have a slew of questions, but I want to leave it open for other people
Sure,
here.
absolutely.
Okay. Here we go. I'll give you another one then. Do you have you ever been surprised when you're writing about August Snow of something that's happened like you didn't expect? You know, it just, I mean, I've talked to some writers who have everything planned out from from the first word to the end word. They know what's going to happen in the story. And then other writers who just sort of, they sort of, let it evolve as they write. And I'm wondering where you fall on that spectrum, if it's something where you have everything plotted out and you know what's going to happen, because I'm assuming if you're writing crime thrillers and mysteries that you sort of have to have a plan, as opposed to, someone who just lets it evolve as they write. So.
Well, I hate to burst that bubble, but let's just say that my process is like if you gave a 2-year-old a lot of sugar and a crayon and told them to draw a straight line.
Mm.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Sometimes people put it in terms of, are you a plotter or a pantser?
Mm.
And plotter means you plot everything right down from the first chapter to the last chapter, twists, turns, character development, act 1, act 2, act 3. And a pantser is somebody who just sits down with a blank screen in front of them or a blank piece of paper and just starts writing and lets the writing lead them. And I'm a little bit of both. Elmore Leonard, I can't quote directly Elmore Leonard, but essentially when he was interviewed one time, he said that he just wrote and let the story go where it would. He was trying to discover where these characters in this setting would take him. The plotting for me comes in after like the second draft. Because let's be honest, Marty, your first draft is going to be crap. Oh man, it's going to be. But you're mapping everything out. So the second draft, you're trying to not only clean up the writing, but give more direction, focus to the story. And the third draft for me is where I start looking at Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, denouement.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's all over the place.
Mhm.
One day I will write chapter 1. I'll just feel so good about writing chapter 1. And then the next day I'll write chapter 7. And it's, whoa, okay, something's got to happen between 1 and 7. So
Wow. So it's not like a chronological thing. Sometimes you'll go chapter 1, chapter 7 and say, how do I get from 1 to 7?
yes,
Wow.
exactly. Exactly.
That's amazing. And you mentioned Elmore Leonard, and that was one of my other questions. It's like, what writers do you see as maybe as inspirations or have influenced you as a writer? Because I immediately, when I was reading your books, I was thinking of Elmore Leonard, but I mean, some of the turns of phrases and everything, you have like some of the Raymond Chandler-ish kind of stuff too, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, Chandler and Hammett, big influences. Robert B. Parker was just brilliant. Broke my heart the day he died and the day that Elmore Leonard died. Walter Mosley, I can't say enough about as far as an influence and as a partial guide for my own voice. There are just a whole bunch of people, and we talked about poets. Poets like Octavio Paz and Pablo Neruda, even though he's waning in popularity for various reasons these days. The Spanish poets, Langston Hughes, and I love Nikki Giovanni. So those are some of my influences, some of the folks that I am grateful for having read.
Yeah. It's I love the fact that you mentioned poets as influences, because I don't talk to a lot of fiction writers who will mention poets as influences in their writing, but
Yeah, as we touched on briefly, poetry is where I started learning the weight and color and form of words, what kind of light every individual word carried. Um, poetry for me was a good way of learning how to take 500 words and cut 300 of them and make those 200 words even more powerful, more meaningful, more weighty and colorful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's that I so appreciate that. So I mean, we only have like a couple minutes here, and I wanna maybe I don't know if you'll do this, but give us maybe a coming attraction of Deus Ex as what we can expect from August Snow in the new book. What I mean, not to give anything away,
Yes,
obviously,
yeah.
but maybe like a coming attraction from Stephen Mack Jones.
Well, and now coming to a bookstore near you this fall. The short byline on Deus Ex is it will probably be the book that gets me excommunicated from the Catholic Church. Essentially, it is it's a mystery surrounding Father Grabowski, who is a character that has been in all three books, and someone who's very close to August, very close to his family history. And Father Grabowski is now retired, but there seems to be a force that is after him. And the force is called Deus Ex, and a off and on splinter group of the Knights Templar over the past 200 years, 300 years. And it's a story about bad guys who may not be that bad, and good guys who may not be all that good. And it's an exploration of, I don't want to make it sound hokey, but it's an exploration of faith and what it means to try to maintain faith in a world that continues to go mad. And will the madness envelop you? So that's
I think that's enough of a teaser to to make anybody want to read that. Yeah, I mean, even just starting out with this is the book that's going to get me excommunicated. Okay, there you go. You sold me. Well, you know what, Stephen, I really want to thank you. This has been really wonderful. I've loved hearing you read and talk about your process and your work. And I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. For Stephen's reading and discussion here. And if you're looking for his books, we have all of them here at Peter White Public Library. So I have one of them sitting on my desk right now, but I promise I'm returning it immediately. Oh, Patrick, do you have a question that you want to ask?
I would just like to say thank you to Mr. Jones for taking time out of his day to meet with us.
Oh, thank you very much, Patrick. I really appreciate it. I love talking with folks at libraries. I love libraries. That's where I fell in love with books as a child. So do all you can to support the Peter White Library.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for coming. And if you want to watch this again, it will be available. Tell your friends, it will be available on our recorded programs here at the library. So thank you all, and have a good night.
Thanks, folks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.